Thanks for joining me today at LearnWake. My name is Brandon Judd, and I'm responding to a video analysis request of a Scarecrow, which is a toe side front roll with a front side 180. And I'm going to first diagnose the issue that is causing him to fall. Then, after we've gone over the issue here and watched some of these attempts, I'm going to compare it to some correct versions, and we're going to talk about how to do it correctly, but then at the end we're going to put it all together and give you a plan for what to practice, things to do to get this Scarecrow to pop correctly, so the rotation is controllable, and so you can land this consistently. So thanks again for uploading this video. We really appreciate you allowing us to participate in your progress. So we look forward to helping you get this thing consistent in no time. What I want you to watch and pay attention to when I do play this is your takeoff. Right now, the biggest thing that's preventing you from landing this is that the board is not really rebounding off the wake. A lot of people call that the trip. Some people can do this in kind of a progressive fashion, but regardless, the board does not continue through the wake. Instead, it sort of stops at the wake and bounces off the wake, rebounding back in the direction that you came from. So your upper body sort of tumbles forward into a front flip. So let's watch some of these and pay attention to the board. And I may pause this on a couple of them. But you'll notice that the board wants to keep going and your upper body wants to start flipping, and those two motions sort of counteract each other and stall the flip out in the beginning. And that's what makes it really difficult to gain control of it. So looks like no shortage of pop, which is great. We just got to get it more controllable. So watch the board go through the wake here and how long it takes to start going the other direction. So the board has gone forward across the wakes, and your upper body is also trying to dive forward across the wakes, which makes you just kind of fold in half here, and it makes the flip stall. And because of that, what happens is it makes it really hard for you to get around, which is why you landed on your back here instead of upright. One thing before I get into the flipping spot and before I forget, one thing you can do to warm up your landing position for this, because it looks like some of these you could have ridden away from, but one of the things to do is to do a toe side front side 180 out into the flats and land a little bit further than you normally would for your Scarecrow. As long as you can do them wake to wake. Obviously, you wouldn't want to try that for your first time into the flats. But that being said, it's a good way to practice a really heavy, hard landing on your switch heel side. It may just be that you rarely ride switch. I haven't seen enough of your riding to know this for sure, but it may be that you rarely ride switch, and so a really hard switch heel side landing is very uncomfortable for you. And if that's the case, then that may also cause you to not land it. Even if your takeoff is perfect, it still may be really uncomfortable landing switch heel side. So just keep that in mind while we work on the takeoff, that if you haven't practiced the switch heel side landing on a bigger, harder landing before, it would be wise to brush up on that. Alright, so let's look at a stock Scarecrow real quick here, and I'll scroll through this. Sometimes it's a little choppy, but I'll scroll through this as best I can. So a couple things I want you to pay attention to is first, let's just look at the board only. We'll just separate that variable. Watch what happens to the board as Chad edges through here. I may have to just play this through in slow motion. It's kind of chopping up for me. Alright, so you'll watch the toe side edge rides up the wake, and then it stops and goes directly backwards towards the direction that he came from. So you'll see that the nose of the board goes this direction, instead of the nose of the board staying pointed across the wakes, and that's going to cause the board to want to go this way while Chad catapults himself forward and flips in toward the forward front flipping rotation. Sorry, say that 5 times fast. But the nose of the board, you'll see, immediately goes that direction, and the board kind of stops and it swings toward his takeoff side. So you'll see in the middle of the air, the board, when he's halfway through the flip, the board is on his takeoff side, and his upper body is on his landing side. Whereas for you, it's sort of lined up at the same direction, like the board was kind of under you and you were folded in half. If we can go back to one of those, if we can find this here again, we're getting there. There we go. So you'll see how the board is under you, your upper body's starting to flip, and then if you look at Chad's, you'll see that the board is all the way to the side of him, and that's because at the wake the board rebounded and went kind of around behind him, if that makes sense. So let's take a look at a grabbed version, and in this you'll watch how the board rebounds up into Kyle's hand, and he'll go straight up, flip, and then drop right out of it. This type of flipping rotation, it should be the end goal because it allows you to grab it and take it to Mob. So you'll see if we watch that again, the board doesn't go this way anymore. This board, it starts bouncing that way up into his hand. So hopefully we can catch that. Yeah, there we go. It's working. All right. So you'll see the board is going that direction now instead of still going out in front of him. And that allows him to go straight up, flip, and then drop straight out of it nice and comfortable on the second wake. So that should be the goal type of rotation for you. The way to do that has a lot to do with your body position at the wake and how you load the line. So here's just another angle of it so you can see the correct version. But I want you to watch his shoulders. He actually kind of loads it up over the tail at the last second right here. It's very, very subtle. And that gives him the right trajectory on takeoff. So right before he takes off the wake, he gets back this direction. Obviously still on his toe side edge. But he bounces back against the rope a little bit, and that allows him to really trip the board and spring forward into the landing. And that's something that you don't do on your edge in. So let's analyze this edge in briefly, and then I'll compare it to yours. So watch the line, watch how tight it is, and how he's able to build and build all the way into the trick. So he's edging, and then he builds all the way here and still uses a tight line and stays on edge. So when we go back to yours, you'll notice that you get really flat and coast for a while. So you edge in, and then you flatten off and try to push. And because you flatten off and try to push without using the rope, that makes the board continue this way. Instead, you want to hold that lean against the rope, and you want to increase that lean a little bit right here at the wake. The best way to practice this is to do front side reentries, and to do them two-handed. It's kind of weird feeling, but if you do two-handed front side reentry ollies, where you take off the front of this wake and land back down on the front of this wake, that is going to really, really, really help you learn that kind of loaded tail popping takeoff. So that would be the drill that I would have you do for this, is do two-handed kind of loaded, springy feeling reentry ollies right here. Once you're able to do that, you just cruise in on your toes and then load one of those up into the flip. That should slow your across momentum down significantly so that you land wake to wake. You can also shorten your approach up a little bit, because right now your approach is so wide, so you can see you're all the way out here. Your approach is so wide that it causes you to get really aggressive really quick, and then you go completely flat here, and then you try and stand up and push. And because you're trying to stand up and push flat like this, your board still goes this direction. This is a really good pause point to show how much your board's still trying to go across the wakes. Instead of how the other ones, we'll show you how Kyle's lines up. We'll get a shot of it right at the wake. You'll see how it's very tail heavy, and the board's not pointing across the wake so hard. I can see a lot of the bottom of the board here. That shows me that he's kind of loaded up a bit and really stepping on the tail, and that's going to stop the board from going this way and make it go this way instead. So it'll bounce that direction. Whereas yours is really flat. You can't see the bottom of it, so it's going to accelerate this way instead of bounce that way. And that's the biggest thing. So preparation to kind of wrap that all up, I would do some toe side, front side 180s out into the flats where you land on your switch heel side confidently. Then I would try some two-handed front side reentry ollies right here, where you pop them nice and high. And then I would come in with a shorter approach, and then I would stay against the rope all the way until you do that reentry ollie type pop, and that will fling you into the flip much more controlled. It'll trip the board behind you. You'll probably over-rotate the first few that you're doing because of how aggressive you're throwing your upper body into this flip, and you really don't have to arch into this that hard. And I mean, you're really going for it with your upper body. You can quiet your upper body down significantly. So here's a good example. Watch Kyle's upper body. Watch how quiet it is on this Scarecrow. Watch his chest. It just kind of goes up and around. He's not reaching or stretching for anything. So watch that again. Watch his center mass here. He just kind of goes up, rolls over, and drops out of it. So that's the goal. If you trip it right, you really don't have to lurch and throw your body into it like this. So quiet that down and trip that a little better, and this will be looking great in no time. Again, you have no shortage of pop on this. You're going nice and high, as you can see in this one from kind of the normal boat perspective. I mean, that's significant. Like, you're getting up there. You have no problem with the amount of time. You're going to be able to float this nice and slow and smooth once you get the pop right. So hopefully that works out for you. Let us know if you have any other questions. Good luck, and practice some of those drills. And I really do think you'll have this pretty consistent once that pop feels right at the beginning. So thanks again for uploading the video, and we'll see you around the site.